What if the man a cop publicly humiliated for loitering was actually the new police chief? In a quiet city street, a black man stands accused, shamed, and confronted by an officer who doesn't know his true identity. But when the truth comes out, everything changes. Forever. This isn't just a story about one encounter, it's about justice, redemption, and a community demanding real change. Stay with us as we unravel the moment that exposed deep wounds and sparked hope in a divided city. You won't believe how this story turns around, especially when the officer realizes who he just humiliated. Stick with us till the end for the powerful twist that left an entire city speechless. If stories of justice, redemption, and real change matter to you, make sure to subscribe and never miss another powerful moment. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the quiet street of Maplewood, a neighborhood that had seen better days but was still home to many families. It was early evening, and a few residents lingered outside, chatting or finishing up small errands before nightfall. Among them stood Marcus Ellis, a calm and composed black man in his mid-30s. He wasn't doing anything wrong, just waiting near a small convenience store, taking a moment to catch his breath after a long day. His stance was relaxed, hands in his pockets, eyes occasionally scanning the street as neighbors passed by. To any casual observer, he was just another man standing on the corner, blending into the everyday rhythm of the neighborhood. But all that changed in an instant. From around the corner, a patrol car rolled up, its tires crunching against the gravel. Officer James Bradford, a seasoned cop with a stern demeanor, spotted Marcus immediately. Without hesitation, he stepped out, his boots thudding hard on the pavement as he approached. "Hey, what are you doing just standing around here?" Bradford's voice was sharp, loud enough for the few onlookers to hear. His tone left no room for an answer. Marcus looked up, startled but steady. "Just waiting," he replied calmly. Bradford's eyes narrowed. "You know this area's been getting complaints about loitering and suspicious activity. You're going to have to move along." The word loitering hung heavy in the air. Nearby residents exchanged uneasy glances. Marcus hadn't caused a single disturbance, no loud noises, no suspicious behavior, just existing peacefully in his own neighborhood. But Bradford wasn't listening. His gaze was hardened by years of seeing faces like Marcus's tied to assumptions and stereotypes. "You don't belong here," he barked, stepping closer. "Move along before I make you." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Officer, I'm not causing any trouble." The crowd began to grow, whispers rippling through the air. Some shook their heads, others pulled out phones, capturing the tense exchange. For Marcus, it wasn't just about being told to leave, it was the humiliation, the judgment cast without a word of explanation or respect. In that moment, the simple act of standing still became a symbol of something much larger, the painful reality of being seen not as a person, but as a problem. And as the officer's voice echoed down the street, the seeds of a story far more complicated and powerful were just beginning to take root. The video was everywhere, shared, reposted, and commented on 1,000 times within hours. On social media platforms, local news pages, and neighborhood forums, the footage of Officer Bradford publicly confronting Marcus Ellis sparked a firestorm of anger and disbelief. People couldn't believe what they had witnessed. Comments poured in. "How dare he treat a man like that in his own neighborhood? This is exactly why trust in the police is breaking down. That's blatant racial profiling." The hashtag Justice for Marcus began trending locally, rallying residents, activists, and allies to speak out against the injustice. In Maplewood's small coffee shops and corner stores, the conversation was urgent and emotional. Mrs. Jenkins, an elderly woman who had lived in the neighborhood for over 40 years, shook her head in dismay. "I've seen a lot in my time," she said, "but this just ain't right. A man standing quietly, and a cop treating him like a criminal." At the community center, a meeting was called the very next evening. Dozens of residents crammed into the room, their faces a mixture of frustration, fear, and determination. Parents worried about their children's safety, young people shared stories of their own encounters with law enforcement, and longtime residents voiced deep concerns about the growing divide between the police and the community they served. Local activist Tanya Reid took the floor. "This isn't just about Marcus," she declared. "It's about the countless others who live in fear of being stopped, questioned, or worse, because of the color of their skin. We need accountability. We need change." News outlets picked up the story, broadcasting interviews and panels that debated police conduct and systemic bias. The city council received dozens of letters and petitions demanding an official investigation into Officer Bradford's conduct and broader reforms within the department. Yet beneath the headlines and outrage, the community grappled with a deeper unease. What did this incident say about trust, respect, and safety? How could a neighborhood heal when suspicion and fear hung thick in the air? Meanwhile, Marcus remained quiet, letting the voices of the community rise around him. But little did anyone know, Marcus's story was far from ordinary. The man at the center of the storm wasn't just a victim of profiling. He was about to reveal a truth that would challenge every assumption made that day, and force the entire city to confront the very meaning of justice. Behind the viral video and the public outrage lay a story few knew, and even fewer expected. Marcus Ellis was no ordinary man standing on that corner. A lifelong resident of Maplewood, Marcus had grown up amid its struggles and its spirit. From an early age, he understood the challenges his community faced: poverty, crime, and too often, mistrust between neighbors and law enforcement. But Marcus was determined to be part of the solution, not just another face in the crowd. After college, he joined the police force, not out of a desire for power, but driven by a deep sense of justice and a commitment to bridge the widening gap between police and the people they served. His colleagues respected his calm demeanor and his ability to listen, a rare trait in a department where tensions often ran high. His dedication quickly earned him promotions, and just weeks before the incident, Marcus had been appointed as the new police chief for the district. The promotion was a sign of change, of hope. He wasn't just a figurehead. Marcus was known for his innovative ideas on community policing and transparency, promising a new era for Maplewood's troubled relationship with law enforcement. But Marcus had a plan. To understand his neighborhood better and to address the root causes of conflict, he had chosen to go undercover occasionally, walking the streets, listening to residents, and experiencing firsthand the reality many faced daily. That evening, when Officer Bradford confronted him, Marcus was doing exactly that, quietly observing, connecting with his community without the shield of his badge. Yet, despite his rank and his intentions, Marcus was mistaken for a troublemaker. The irony was sharp and bitter. He was the very leader tasked with changing the culture Bradford represented. This backstory was a stark contrast to the image painted by the viral video. Marcus wasn't a stranger or a suspicious figure. He was a beacon of hope, a symbol of progress in a city desperate for it. As news outlets dug deeper, interviews revealed Marcus's character, his years of service, his vision for reform, and his unshakable commitment to justice. The community's outrage grew not just at Bradford's actions, but at the painful reminder of how easily assumptions were made, even against those who dedicated their lives to making things better. Marcus's story wasn't just about one man, it was about the complex layers of identity, perception, and leadership in a city struggling to heal. The moment of revelation came unexpectedly, shaking the community and police department alike to their core. As news of the incident spread, reporters swarmed the Maplewood Police Department demanding answers. The chief, Marcus Ellis, had remained silent during the initial uproar, allowing the community's voice to be heard without interference. But the tension was growing. Whispers of his identity began to circulate. Then came the press conference. Standing before a sea of cameras and microphones, Marcus stepped up to the podium. His expression was calm but resolute. The room fell silent, anticipation thick in the air. "Good evening," Marcus began, his voice steady. "I want to address the incident involving me and Officer Bradford." A murmur rippled through the crowd. "I was the man approached that day," he continued. "The man who was accused of loitering and treated unfairly." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "What most people don't know is that I am the newly appointed police chief of Maplewood. I was working undercover that evening to better understand the community and the challenges we face. Gasps and stunned expressions met his revelation. The officer who had publicly shamed him was unaware of who he was dealing with, not just any resident, but the very leader charged with guiding the police force toward change. The cameras flashed as Marcus spoke about his vision, a department that listens, respects, and works alongside its citizens. He spoke of accountability and transparency, and of his commitment to rooting out bias within the force. The revelation struck a nerve. Many felt shock, some embarrassment, and others a renewed sense of hope. If even the police chief could be misjudged so easily, how many others were suffering silently? Officer Bradford, who sat quietly in the back, looked down, his face a mixture of regret and disbelief. He hadn't just confronted a man, he had confronted the embodiment of the change he was supposed to support. The press conference ignited a fierce debate across the city and nation. News headlines blared, "Police chief humiliated by officer, undercover in his own community." The story challenged people to reconsider their assumptions, their biases, and the very nature of justice and authority. Marcus's reveal was more than a personal vindication. It was a call to action, a reminder that beneath every label and stereotype lies a deeper truth waiting to be seen. The aftermath of Marcus Ellis's reveal sent shockwaves through the Maplewood Police Department and the community it served. What began as a viral video had now transformed into a powerful catalyst demanding immediate change. Within hours of the press conference, city officials called an emergency meeting. The mayor's office, the police oversight committee, and community leaders gathered to address the simmering crisis. The pressure was immense, both to hold Officer Bradford accountable and to begin repairing the deep fractures in public trust. Bradford, once a respected officer, found himself under intense scrutiny. Internal Affairs launched a swift investigation into his conduct during the incident. As the details emerged, many questioned whether his actions reflected a deeper pattern of bias or misconduct. Public calls for his suspension grew louder, amplified by protests outside the police headquarters and City Hall. Meanwhile, Marcus was thrust into the spotlight, not just as a victim, but as a leader bearing the enormous weight of expectation. His role as police chief had always been challenging, but now, with the incident so public, his leadership was put to the ultimate test. He faced a dual battle: to reform an institution resistant to change, and to mend the wounds inflicted by years of mistrust and systemic bias. The community watched closely, hoping this moment would mark a turning point. Yet Marcus remained focused and undeterred. He convened a series of listening sessions with residents, police officers, and activists. He pushed for new training programs addressing racial profiling and implicit bias, emphasizing empathy and communication. Transparency measures were introduced, including body camera policies and public reporting on police conduct. But change didn't come easily. Some officers resisted, feeling blindsided and undermined. Community members remained skeptical, wary of promises unfulfilled in the past. The incident had exposed raw nerves and long-standing grievances, and healing would require more than quick fixes. At the same time, Marcus's personal life felt the strain. The public spotlight was relentless, and the backlash from Bradford's supporters was harsh. Yet, through it all, Marcus's resolve only grew stronger. This episode was more than an isolated confrontation, it was a mirror held up to the city's deepest issues. The fallout revealed the urgent need for systemic reform and the courage required to confront uncomfortable truths. As the dust settled, one thing was clear: Marcus Ellis was no longer just a man on a corner. He was a symbol of hope, and the embodiment of change. As the whirlwind of public outrage and institutional upheaval swirled around him, Officer James Bradford found himself isolated in a storm of scrutiny and self-reflection. Known within the department as a by-the-book, no-nonsense cop, Bradford had never imagined that one encounter would unravel his career and thrust him into the harsh glare of media and community judgment. Initially, Bradford's response was defensive. In an early statement to the press, he insisted he was simply doing his job, maintaining public safety by questioning someone he believed was loitering suspiciously. He claimed no prejudice, no ill intent, only concern for the neighborhood's security. But his words rang hollow to many, especially after Marcus Ellis's reveal as the new police chief. The department's internal investigation soon began to uncover more troubling details. Witnesses came forward describing similar confrontations where Bradford's aggressive tactics appeared to target black residents disproportionately. Patterns emerged that suggested implicit bias, even if unconscious, was coloring his judgments. Public pressure mounted, demanding accountability. Protesters called for Bradford's immediate suspension, and community leaders demanded his removal. The police union initially stood by him, emphasizing the difficulty of police work and cautioning against rushing to judgment. But the tide was turning. Behind closed doors, Bradford faced intense questioning. The weight of the situation began to crack his previously unshakable confidence. His superiors pressured him to admit mistakes and apologize publicly. His personal life felt the strain. Friends and family urged him to reconsider his stance. After days of silence, Bradford made a surprising move, a heartfelt public apology. Standing before a small group of reporters, his voice steady but tinged with remorse, he said, "I recognize that my actions that day were wrong. I failed to see the bigger picture, and I regret the pain I caused, not just to Chief Ellis, but to our community. This has been a wake-up call for me." His apology was met with mixed reactions. Some saw it as a genuine step toward accountability, while others viewed it as too little, too late. Marcus Ellis, for his part, accepted the apology but emphasized that true change required more than words. Bradford's response became a microcosm of the larger struggle: how to confront bias, admit fault, and grow in the face of deeply ingrained attitudes. His journey wasn't just about redemption but about reckoning with the role officers play in shaping trust and justice. As Maplewood moved forward, Bradford's response underscored a critical truth: change begins with courage, both to stand up and to own one's mistakes. The revelation that Marcus Ellis, the man publicly shamed for loitering, was in fact the newly appointed police chief sent ripples throughout Maplewood's diverse community. The incident, and Marcus's poised response, became more than a headline. It became a symbol of the city's struggle and hope for reconciliation. In neighborhoods across Maplewood, residents gathered to discuss what had happened. Some expressed outrage, not only at Officer Bradford's behavior but at the deeper, systemic issues it represented. Long-standing frustrations about racial profiling, mistrust, and lack of police accountability found a powerful voice in Marcus's story. Yet amid the anger, there was also an unmistakable current of hope. Community leaders, activists, and local clergy organized forums and town hall meetings to address the incident and brainstorm ways to heal the divide. Marcus's openness and humility inspired many, and people saw in him a rare willingness to listen and act. Local businesses stepped forward too, offering their support. Cafes hosted discussion groups, bookstores promoted literature on racial justice and police reform, youth centers invited officers and residents to participate in joint activities. The community wasn't just reacting, it was mobilizing. Social media became a powerful platform for both support and dialogue. Hashtags like #ChiefEllis and #ChangeInMaplewood trended as residents shared personal stories of encounters with law enforcement, hopes for the future, and calls for unity. Videos and messages flooded in, expressing solidarity with Marcus and demanding meaningful change. Schools incorporated lessons about bias and respect, inviting Marcus to speak directly to students about leadership and empathy. Parents found comfort knowing the chief was invested in their children's safety and well-being. Yet the response was not without challenges. Some residents remained skeptical, haunted by years of negative experiences with the police. Others worried that Marcus's efforts might be undermined by entrenched attitudes within the department. Still, many chose to give hope a chance, rallying behind a leader who dared to be vulnerable and visionary. For Marcus, the community's response was both humbling and energizing. It reaffirmed why he had accepted the role of police chief, to build bridges where walls had stood for too long. In this moment, Maplewood was not just witnessing a story of injustice, it was witnessing the birth of a movement. A community ready to stand together, demand accountability, and believe in the possibility of real change. The storm of controversy had settled, but the real work was just beginning. Marcus Ellis, now firmly established not just as Maplewood's police chief but as a beacon of hope, stood at a pivotal crossroads. The incident that had once threatened to undermine his authority had, paradoxically, strengthened his resolve and galvanized the entire city. With renewed energy, Marcus launched a comprehensive reform plan designed to transform the police department from within. He prioritized recruitment of officers who reflected the city's diversity, emphasizing empathy, cultural competency, and community engagement over outdated, tough-on-crime tactics. Specialized training programs tackled implicit bias, de-escalation, and mental health awareness. Every officer was required to participate. Marcus also pushed for transparency measures that were unprecedented in Maplewood. Public dashboards detailed complaint investigations, use of force incidents, and disciplinary actions. Community oversight boards were empowered with real authority, not just advisory roles. For the first time, residents felt they had a genuine voice in policing. But Marcus knew policy alone wasn't enough. He spent countless hours walking the streets, attending block parties, visiting schools, and meeting with residents one-on-one. His visibility was a deliberate effort to humanize the badge and break down the walls of fear and suspicion. Slowly, the city began to see the police not as an occupying force, but as neighbors and partners. At the same time, Marcus fostered healing within the department. He met privately with officers like James Bradford, encouraging self-reflection and growth. Bradford's public apology marked a turning point. He enrolled in sensitivity training and volunteered for community outreach, seeking to make amends and rebuild trust. Change was neither swift nor smooth. Challenges persisted, and critics remained vocal. But the seeds of transformation had taken root. Crime rates began to drop, and surveys showed improving public confidence. The city's spirit, once fractured, was knitting itself back together. Marcus's journey from a man shamed on a street corner to a leader inspiring an entire city symbolized something far greater: the power of accountability, courage, and the belief that change is possible, even in the face of entrenched prejudice. As Maplewood stepped into this new chapter, one thing was certain: this was not just a story of a single incident, but a story of redemption, unity, and hope for generations to come. In the same spot where he was once humiliated, Chief Marcus Ellis now walks with purpose, not shame. His presence transformed pain into progress, and his leadership turned a moment of injustice into a movement for change. Officer Bradford learned. The community healed. And a city divided found its voice, united not by perfection, but by courage. Because sometimes, the person you try to shame is the one sent to lead you.